Personal object pronouns in Italian replace nouns that function as the object of a verb. Instead of repeating a noun, we replace it with a pronoun. We can begin with direct object pronouns, which replace the direct object of a verb, that is, the person or thing that receives the action directly. Direct object pronouns also answer the questions what or whom. And in English, we can have a simple phrase like I eat an apple. I eat it. The direct object is apple, and its pronoun is it. Such pronouns in English are me, you, him, her, us, and them. But in Italian, their forms will be different, being affected by gender and number. Mi, ti, lo, la, ci, vi, li, le. The word vi is the direct object pronoun for you all or y'all, and even though English doesn't have it, I will still include it. While some pronouns are understandable, others are affected by gender and number. Lo can mean singular masculine it or him. La can be singular feminine it or her. Li can be plural masculine them, as in people or things, and le can mean plural feminine them. So, this is what direct object pronouns look like in Italian, and now we can see how to use them. First, we need to understand their placement. The most common placement for them is before a conjugated verb, and we can see them in order in basic phrases. Mi vedi, ti chiamo, lo mangio, la leggo, ci ascolta, vi invito, li vedo, le compro. This method is the most common, but at the same time, such pronouns can be attached to infinitives and gerunds. And here, we have more rules. Considering placement, this is where the concept can be tricky, because generally, it's common to place pronouns before verbs, but it's important to see the other forms. If we want to attach a pronoun to an infinitive, we have to drop the final e from the infinitive ending, that is, from are, ere, ire. Then, we attach the pronoun to it, and we can see some examples with pronouns before and after. Voglio mangiare la mela. La voglio mangiare. Voglio mangiarla. Devo leggere il libro. Lo devo leggere. Devo leggerlo. Both placements are grammatically correct, and the attachment sounds natural in spoken Italian. Additionally, we can attach direct object pronouns to gerunds, which express ongoing actions. Italian gerunds end in ando or endo, similar to the English ing. Still, this is another form to consider, because unlike infinitives, we do not drop anything. We can attach pronouns as they are, but they can never go before the gerund. This concept is more advanced, and if it sounds too confusing, it's best to practice with pronouns before the verb. Otherwise, we can learn every possible placement of pronouns, which is most common in the progressive tense that uses the verb stare, to be. This construction behaves like a single verbal unit, but pronoun placement is flexible. We can see this formation in comparison to the basic form. Sto leggendo il libro. Lo sto leggendo. Sto leggendolo. This attachment is very common in Italian speech. At last, one other concept has to be known, and it relates to the compound past, which will be explained in detail in a separate video. Here, I will simply show one rule. With the Italian present perfect, past participles must agree with direct object pronouns, and this agreement happens only with them. An example can be Ho mangiato le mele. Le ho mangiate. The participle agrees in gender and number with the pronoun, but again, this concept is for a separate video. Now, let's see indirect object pronouns which replace the person to whom or for whom something is done, thereby answering such questions. In English, an example is I give the book to Adam. I give him the book. Or I give the book to him. In this case, there's a direct object with an indirect object, so him is the indirect object pronoun. Such pronouns in English borrow the same form, but most of the time they're specified in context with the preposition to or for. In Italian, the forms are also borrowed, but some change. Mi, ti, li, ci, vi, li. Such pronouns don't just mean me, you, him. They mean to me, to you, to him, basically indicating to whom. Even so, to him, to her, and to them have the same pronoun, li, be it masculine or feminine, so context will show the difference in gender and number. As a note, this pronoun also has a traditional form, le, but is less common in speech. So, this is what indirect object pronouns look like in Italian, and now we can see how to use them. The good thing is that placement rules of indirect object pronouns are the same as those of direct pronouns. The most common placement is before a conjugated verb, and we can see them in order in basic phrases. Mi parla. Ti scrivo. Gli do il libro. Ci manda un messaggio. Vi spiego la lezione. Gli porto il regalo. Notice how some examples also have direct objects, because typically the two types of pronouns work together in context. Placing such pronouns before verbs is the most common method, but at the same time, they work with infinitives the same way. To attach an indirect object pronoun to an infinitive, drop the final e from it and then attach the pronoun. We can see some examples with pronouns before and after. Voglio parlare a Maria. Voglio parlargli. Devo scrivere a Luca. Devo scrivergli. Posso dare il regalo a loro. Posso dargli il regalo. Furthermore, we can attach indirect object pronouns to gerunds, which again is a tricky but practical concept. The most common use is again the progressive tense that uses the verb stare, to be, as we can see in comparison to the basic form. Scrivendo a Luca ho risolto tutto. Scrivendogli ho risolto tutto. At last, indirect object pronouns do not affect past participles, so there is no need to show this concept. The last thing to consider in this lesson is double object pronouns that combine indirect pronouns with direct pronouns. At this point, the concept can become difficult to understand because Italian changes the form of the pronouns when combined. It's important to understand that when combining pronouns, indirect ones will come first, and then direct ones. This combination will cause indirect object pronouns to change form, and more specifically, mi, ti, ci, vi, li change form to me, te, ce, ve, lie. Once again, when combining such words, indirect pronouns take these forms, and then we add direct pronouns. Nonetheless, considering the use of this grammar, it would not make sense to repeat certain pronouns, like mi, ti, ci, and vi. As a result, when using indirect pronouns with direct ones, the only logical pronouns to use are lo, la, li, and le. However, another rule comes into play. When combining third-person forms with lo, la, li, le, Italian will join them into single words. Liello, liella, lielli, lielle. Other indirect pronouns simply change the E to E, but they will not be joined as single words. This rule applies only to third-person pronouns, because indirect pronouns come first. Another thing to consider is the pronoun ne, which is a versatile pronoun meaning of it or of them, or about it, about them. This pronoun is special because it replaces phrases with prepositions to avoid repetition, so it serves as a partitive construction, allowing a more natural speech and often translating to some, of them, about it, from there. If again it sounds too confusing, the meaning will be simple in context. So, this is what combined object pronouns look like in Italian, and now we can see how to use them. Just like previous concepts, double object pronouns go before conjugated verbs, but the indirect pronoun will go first, like in the following sentences. Me lo dice. Te la mando. Glielo do. Ce li mostra. Ve le spiego. Gliele porto. Placing combined pronouns before verbs is again the most common way, and as always, it's possible to attach them to infinitives and gerunds. When infinitives are combined with them, the indirect pronoun will go first, and the final e is removed from the infinitive. Voglio dare il libro a Maria. Voglio darglielo. Preferisco mandare le foto a Luca. Preferisco mandargliele. This formation is very common in spoken Italian. Lastly, when gerunds are combined with multiple pronouns, the form stays the same as with previous concepts, but this is more compact. Sto dando il libro a Maria. Sto dandoglielo. Considering past participles as the final point, if a direct object pronoun is involved, the past participle will agree in gender and number. But once again, this is for a separate video. For this lesson, we've seen a lot of complex ways to use direct and indirect object pronouns in Italian, and in the end, we can see the key takeaways and write them down. Direct pronouns replace what and whom. Indirect pronouns replace to whom and for whom. Combined pronouns change form, and their order matters. Also, don't forget about infinitives and gerunds, where attaching pronouns to them is a possibility. In conclusion, Italian object pronouns can feel very hard because they're compact and flexible, but once you understand what's being replaced, the system will become predictable and simple.